Hello everyone, I'm Justin Bush and I coordinate the State of Washington Invasive Species Council, which is tasked with policy level direction, planning, and coordination for addressing invasive species.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alexis Hafley, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Washington Invasive Species Council. We are here today to talk about our comprehensive approach to first detector programming from A to Z.
The Council brings together all the agencies and organizations in our state that have a role in invasive species, as well as tribal nations, industry, and conservation partners. The Council unites all, looks at the big picture, and fills in gaps that cannot individually be filled.
First detection and reporting are our core themes for our strategy. We have woven these actions throughout our work, and we hope that our experience gives you some ideas for your own programs.
From our perspective, the most basic thing we ask everyone is to be aware of invasive species. Whether someone is an angler, beekeeper, gardener, or hiker, everyone has something at risk from this problem and has a reason to be aware.
In addition to awareness, the second ask we have for the public is see something, say something. If anyone spots a plant, animal, insect, or disease that they suspect is a problem, we ask that they immediately report it to us.
We know that awareness and reporting works, is illustrated by the 2019 first in the nation detection of Asian giant hornet being made to the Washington Invasive Species Council. The initial notification led to the first detected and eradicated nest in the United States in 2020.
One of our crowning achievements for engaging youth is the creation and implementation of our middle school curriculum. We have partnered with a statewide nonprofit to deliver this content through teacher workshops. By teaching the teacher, our reach is far more than what the council would be capable of on its own.
We also embed and institutionalize reporting tools and processes into the policies, plans, and strategies of our partners. Most recently, we've been working with more than 180 cities to improve readiness for forest pests, such as the emerald ash borer.
We always want to better understand widespread and established species. Often, if something is everywhere, we lack baseline information about the specific locations and population size. Without that information, we don't have enough details to set short and long-term action plans.
Throughout our strategy and everything we do, the end goal is action and not collection of data for the sake of a better map. We want to use this information to prevent further introduction and spread, to further research, and help decision makers understand this problem so that we can better address it.
We work with youth, professionals, and adults to promote awareness and understanding of invasive species with an emphasis on prevention and reporting problems.
Finally, we get to Z, as in zebra mussels, which are not established in Washington or the Pacific Northwest. Our approach involves cultivating a network of people who know how to say something when a problem is seen. And at the same time, we're also building response capabilities through planning and exercises.
Creating a successful program doesn't have to be hard. Our experience has shown that just having a tool isn't enough. You need to teach people how to use that tool and to consistently weave it into everything you do for it to really be successful.
We've done it, which means you can too. The great thing is that through the EDDMapS community, there are many people that are willing to help and provide advice. Thanks, and good luck.
Oh, well, thanks. But this is a grass carp, and we don't want this in Ontario, and we don't have this in Ontario. Hi, everybody. My name is Brooke Schreier, and I'm the Aquatic Program Specialist with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters and their Invading Species Awareness Program. If you're not familiar with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, we're actually the largest nonprofit charitable fish and wildlife conservation organization in Ontario. We represent over 100,000 members, subscribers, and supporters. And within the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, we actually have 4 different conservation programs. And within these different conservation programs, we try to address a number of different environmental topics. And one of those that come top of mind, and the reason why we're all here today, is invasive species. So in 1992, the OFAH actually partnered with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to form what is now the Invading Species Awareness Program. So since 1992, what we've really been trying to do is generate education and awareness, which focuses on key pathways for introduction and spread. So if you're seeing this video right now, which is a snippet of all the different social media videos that we've made over the last year, you would see that we're really trying to do a number of different things. But in terms of categorizing those, we're really trying to focus on those key pathways, teaching people like trail users why they should be on the lookout for invasive species, as well as making sure that they maybe scrub off the bottom of their boots. We're also focusing on identification of invasive species so that people know how to identify various aquatic and terrestrial invasive species. But then in addition to that, we're also teaching people how to, use the resources that are out there in order to report invasive species in Ontario, whether it's through the Invading Species Hotline, which is 1-800-563-7711, or whether it's through EDDMapS at www.eddmaps.org/Ontario. We're giving people a variety of methods to report these invasive species, but really focusing on social media as the outlet for which we're getting that information out there, especially over the last year. So one of the main ways that we do this is by really focusing on those key pathways, as I said, but then, when possible, really making sure that we're hitting those main demographics so the people that are on the landscape are seeing this message and then actually retaining that information and then making sure they're reporting. And in the past year, I'm happy to report that we've had over 1,500 phone calls and reports to the Invading Species Awareness Program. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Again, my name is Brooke Schreier. I'm the Aquatic Program Specialist with the Invading Species Awareness Program, and now I'm handing it off to you.
Hi, I'm Megan Evans with the Alberta Invasive Species Council. We're based in Alberta, Canada, and we're a nonprofit organization that was formed in 2006. So since then, we've been working to protect Alberta from the impacts of invasive species. One of the ways that we do that is by using our EDDMapS Alberta app. We officially launched EDDMapS Alberta in 2012. And over the years, our objectives for the program and our approach to promoting it have changed and evolved, but we're currently taking a coordinated approach to the promotion of the app. One of the ways that we do that is by awarding the Big Ed Award. So the Big Ed Award is a pretty big deal here in Alberta. The actual award is a full-size, luxurious leather and metal wrestling belt. The winner has their name engraved on the side of the belt, and they get to keep the belt for 1 year, after which we take it back and award it to the next year's winner. So it's awarded to the person who submits the most EDDMapS reports in a calendar year. And this initiative has created a ton of excitement and lots of discussion and garnered lots of interest in our EDDMapS app. So it's been a really successful competition that we hold every year. So currently in Alberta, we have some big changes happening with EDDMapS, and we are currently working on the development of a coordinated and strategic communications plan. So we have all kinds of ideas of fun initiatives to really engage people and get more people on board using EDDMapS Alberta. So stay tuned for details on those exciting announcements. And for more information about EDDMapS Alberta or about the Alberta Invasive Species Council, visit our website at www.abinvasives.ca.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Evans, Extension Forester with the University of Illinois. I'm here to talk about using Wildspotter at public events on federal lands. This was an effort that we started with the Shawnee National Forest a few years ago, and the real driver was the need for information on invasive species, mapping information in wilderness areas on the forest, particularly to drive management. And so we wanted to figure out the best way to get this data that we needed, and we decided to use it as a public event, not only for education, but also to collect this information. So we partnered with Bugwood and Wildspotter and EDDMapS to kind of serve as the data management and collection system, along with the Forest Service as the land manager, River Cooperative Weed Management Area, the Nature Conservancy Extension, and the Illinois Master Naturalist Program, to come together kind of jointly to do this public event. And so we decided on Burden Falls Wilderness Area. It's a beautiful wilderness area down here in southern Illinois, and one that was in dire need of more information on what invasive species challenges they face and where they're at. So in December of 2018, we started this. We got a group of volunteers together that was a mix of nonprofits, state and federal employees, as well as volunteers. And we decided to come together and do this. And it was really interesting in the sense that we had federal employees, nonprofit employees, these volunteers kind of all together using the same system, the Wildspotter system, to collect this information all on the same day. It was really handy in the sense that all the data kind of came right back in together. So at the end of the day, we already had a compiled database from all these different collections from all the different people. It was a wonderful opportunity to train people on winter identification of these species, as well as how to use the technology to collect data. It was also a great opportunity just to explore some of the neat federal lands we have down here on the Forest Service. Some beautiful sites. We wanted to make it as fun as we could for everybody that volunteered, everybody that was out there. So not only did we sightsee, look at some native species, talk about the native ecosystems, we also collected over 100 reports of invasive species for this wilderness area, as well as found a new population of a very rare endangered plant in Illinois. So at the end of the day, everybody kind of went home with a bunch of Wildspotter swag. And again, this was just the start of this effort. And the idea was to build this public-private partnership, build up a bank of volunteers that know the technology, know the species, so we can continue to collect information about invasive species using Wildspotter.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Lesley Beckworth, the Landowner Coordinator for Teton County Weed and Pest. Today, I wanted to talk about how we conduct invasive species outreach in Jackson Hole. Teton County Weed and Pest is a special district that is mandated by state statute, funded by mill levy, and governed by a board of directors appointed by our county commission. Teton County is a large county of about 4,200 square miles, but 97% of that is federal land, including 2 national parks and more than 1 million acres of Forest Service land. We have a population of about 24,000 people, mostly condensed into the southern 1/3 of the county here. We also have a large number of short-term and seasonal residents. Tourists more than double our population during peak season, with up to 46,000 visitors moving through Jackson Hole each day, totaling about 2.6 million visitors annually. These factors leave us with a wide variety of audiences and a lot of vulnerable but fortunately pristine land. In our outreach efforts, we adapt to each group as best we can. We start with K-5 education. We collaborated with science educators in the area to create a menu of core curriculum options for teachers so they can pick and choose what to use based on their curriculum needs. Our 1st through 5th grade classes start with the basics of plant parts and progress through life cycles, insects in the food web, and end with ecosystem relationships and how to develop and evaluate solutions for invasive species. For landowners and residents, we try to stop invasive species at the source. We worked with our county planning department to require invasive species management as a part of our land development regulations for new construction. We recently shifted from individual focus to HOAs and neighborhoods to take advantage of HOA bylaws and CC&Rs with the help of contacts within HOAs who can champion the cause. This brings continuity to the landscape and allows us to utilize the power of peer pressure. We still perform one-on-one consultations to tailor plans to individual needs, which is important with such a wide variety of landowners. We try to make it as easy as possible for landowners to interact with us with invasive species questions through online tools, social media, and tools like EDDMapS. While tourists are only here for a short time, they have a huge potential for spreading new invaders into remote areas. We focus heavily on the PlayCleanGo campaign and enlist businesses in the recreation industry to spread the message. We host trailhead days at popular trailheads, and we'll be working with some related nonprofits this year to maximize our visibility. We also participate in local events that draw a larger and more captive audience. As with all things, an effective outreach program is one that adapts. In 2020, we, like everyone else, adapted to an abrupt change in our techniques while also seeing a surge in our already high tourism. We chose a Recreate Responsibly campaign to mirror messaging from public health and our state recreation campaign. We hope that through all our efforts, locals and tourists alike will be able to enjoy this amazing ecosystem for generations to come. And off to you, Leigh.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, my name's Leigh Greenwood. I'm the Forest Health Program Director for the Nature Conservancy. One of my main responsibilities is running the Don't Move Firewood campaign, which is an educational campaign all across North America designed to reduce the movement of forest pests. Lots of pests can move on the firewood pathway: emerald ash borer, Asian longhorn beetle, spotted lanternfly, and many, many more. And in order to reduce the movement of these forest pests, we work towards educating firewood users in high-risk areas against the behavior of moving firewood long distances to slow the spread of firewood across North America. I look forward to your questions. Take it away, Krista.
Nice. This is going to come in super handy on the trail. Thanks. Hi, I'm Krista Lutzke, and I am the PlayCleanGo Program Manager with the North American Invasive Species Management Association. And I'm here today to talk about prevention messaging, and how PlayCleanGo can help you when you're doing your outreach with recreationists. So before we get into it, what is PlayCleanGo? PlayCleanGo is an education and outreach campaign for all outdoor recreationists, including land managers. It uses community-based social marketing principles, promotes awareness, understanding, and cooperation, and provides a clear, concise, and perhaps more importantly, consistent call to action to be informed, attentive, and accountable for stopping the spread of invasive species. So how can PlayCleanGo work for you? Well, we have a lot of social network channels that carry a lot of content that you can share on your social channels and make it resonate with you and your users. We also have a lot of videos that we've made on the simple steps to prevention that recreationists can take. And in some of those videos, we even have some species-specific content. So make sure you go to YouTube, PlayCleanGo channel, and check it out and see what will work for you and your area. We also have a free graphic library available at NAISMA.org to help you with your outreach. We've got some printable materials like posters and rack cards, and we have more digital media that you can use and tailor your message to so it resonates better with your recreationists. Also at NAISMA.org, we've got the PlayCleanGo store where we have all of our prevention tools available for you and the recreationists. Make sure to check it out and find something that fits for your organization. We wanted to make sure we included land managers in the conversation as well. So here's some WorkCleanGo materials that are available for our land managers, and we have some great bilingual content. Perhaps the most important thing that we have available in the PlayCleanGo store is the Boot Brush Station kit. And this kit has a wonderful educational panel that's very attention-grabbing, and it can be placed at trailheads, parking areas, wherever your recreationist is going to be, and it guides them on the simple steps of preventing the spread of invasive species. We also encourage everybody to become members of NAISMA. And when you become a member of NAISMA, you get some extra perks. You'll see the things here listed, but perhaps the biggest thing is access to the PlayCleanGo graphic library. And the Partners Graphic Library has a lot more great imagery, printable materials, even pull-up banners for when you do your outreach with your recreationists. So we encourage you to become a NAISMA member today. And of course, PlayCleanGo is not possible without all of these major contributors and partners, and federal land organizations such as the Forest Service, National Park Service, and Fish and Wildlife Service, who help us make sure that the consistency of PlayCleanGo is there across all jurisdictions and organizations just like you. I really want to say thank you for your time and encourage you to ask questions about PlayCleanGo and how we can fit that into your outreach efforts. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at the information listed above.
Okay. All right. So first question for Lesley. Who assures that invasive species management plans are done as part of development, that they're being implemented and they're being followed?
Thanks, Elizabeth. So that is a great question. So who assures that those invasive species management plans are done and implemented? It is one of our problems because we are not officially a part of the county. We are a special district and separate from the planning department. I do review the plans, every plan that comes through the planning department, to make sure that it is included, that the language is correct. And in the summer season, not right now, I am actually the one that goes out and makes sure that there is an inventory completed for those as well. And it took a while of working through our planning department, which has had a lot of turnover. So we've had a lot of back and forth of re-educating new planning department personnel to make sure that those are done correctly. On the back end, we don't sign off on them. Like the planning department might sign off on, whether or not your electricity is done correctly, and those kinds of things are up to code. Where that falls back is back onto our state law, where I would follow up on any property to make sure that management plans are being done, which is as quick as with major development, is as quick as being able to go and see if those disturbed sites have got invasive species in them if they're being maintained. So it's still, that is a little bit of a weedy part, but at this point we are just glad that they are on at everyone's attention at the beginning of the project, whether that's just the contractor or just the engineer that's doing the work. Thanks.
Great, appreciate that. So a question that really this could be for anyone. And it also speaks a little bit to some of the points that Steve was making early in his keynote about some of these other organizations that have campaigns working on invasive species. And the question or statement really is that harmonizing messaging and coordinating the coordination seems to be in vogue. From the scale that you all work in, and I know you work in different scales, how do you successfully harmonize and integrate the international and national messaging in your work? And we know that the words we use are so very important. And we have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, which is a wonderful thing that so many folks want to work on invasives, and we need more folks that want to work on invasives. But how do we make sure that we're saying the same thing and we're not confusing our audience? And whoever wants to jump in on that first, just go right ahead. I see Krista has a big smile.
Well, I can take it from the national perspective, and essentially that is what PlayCleanGo does. We provide that opportunity to give you that same book, so to speak, so that when you have that prevention messaging or that outreach materials, we've got a brand guide that you can follow to ensure that it's consistent across any jurisdiction. It allows you to use it for recreationists. I know prior to my position, I used it for our local tourism industry as well. And it goes from nonprofits to government agencies. It really works across all activities and across all jurisdictions, because it's just a simple message that speaks directly to the recreationist. And a lot of study and work went into the types of verbiage that we should use, the colors that we should use, the content that we should have. So it's the legwork has been done, and it's there for everybody to use at whatever budget they have available, from free to really getting involved into the NAISMA organization and getting that partner graphics library. So you can personalize it and localize it however you see fit. And with that consistent PlayCleanGo, it really keeps the message consistent and the visuals consistent as well. And I'm sure everyone on the panel can talk to their level of organizations too.
Yeah, and to go from there, Krista, for the Don't Move Firewood efforts, which are across all the US states as well as Canadian provinces in some format, there's got to be a decent amount of flexibility within the consistency, which is a little bit of just sort of a reality. You think about the saying, you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. We have places where the message "Don't move firewood" is not well liked, so we use a "buy it where you burn it" message. In Canada, they prefer "buy local, burn local." All of these messages are acceptable, and I see that too, for instance, in PlayCleanGo, with your partnering work in WorkCleanGo, because workers don't play. And so, that flexibility within the structure is the key to allowing it to expand across broad geographies and broad target audiences. But we still keep the core of the messages and the look and the sort of take homes aligned, so that the public or your target audience doesn't get confused over time. And it's much more important to prevent the confusion than to keep every single word the same, as we all know.
Yeah, building off what Leah said. So my name is Alexis Hafley, and I'm with the Washington Invasive Species Council. So we're a statewide effort. We tend to look to our national and international leaders for their messaging. So like PlayCleanGo, we use the "buy it where you burn it" messaging, things like that. And then we tweak them to fit our area. And so depending on the examples that are being used for these campaigns and these messages, we might tweak the species that we're most worried about in our priority list for our region. And then we also kind of continue to look down the line and help our local and regional partners with their messaging as well, just to make sure that it's fitting our specific needs, it's filling a niche, everybody is understanding what the messaging is, we're being very clear, and we're using real world examples that folks in our state are going to be worried about. And I think that's one of the really great things about these types of campaigns and about these types of messaging is that all of the groundwork has been laid. Krista, you were saying like how much study and research goes into this messaging and picking the words and picking the colors. And so all of that has been done. And it's rather than reinventing the wheel, we sort of take this really nice package that's been completed and then tweak it for our own needs. And so I really appreciate that flexibility to be able to sort of scale up and down as necessary. And I think that makes coordinating the coordinated effort a lot easier, a lot more streamlined, and then you're still getting that same message consistent no matter what level you're communicating at. Thank you.
I can't really speak at an international or national scale since I'm from Ontario and we're a provincial program. But I think the question, it's a great question, but it even goes deeper than that in Ontario specifically. The question was, how do we maintain the message? But I think a big question for me in my work is, how do we avoid duplicating the message? Because as we all know, with all these different organizations that are doing work, especially in Ontario, we have a number of NGOs, the provincial government, we have the federal government who are all doing invasive species work. And what you want to make sure is that we're not essentially recreating the wheel or consistently sending out the same message to the same people, because we all have finite resources. So what we actually make sure that we do, for example, with Asian Carps Canada, is we have a working group that works together in collaboration to, let's say, create a social media campaign. So if we're running a social media campaign, which we did just recently, we have the OFAH, my organization, we have the Invasive Species Center, we have the Federation of Ontario Cottagers Association, who all work together to generate different content, make sure it kind of all looks the same, but it's coming from the different partners. And then when they actually get released, what we make sure is we share that content. And in some circumstances, we even boost that content with paid advertising. So again, making sure that all of our dollars and cents aren't being wasted as we all potentially duplicate messaging, right? So that's a big thing for us. Big thing in my role is just making sure that all that messaging not only is consistent, but is also, like I said, not being overly duplicated.
Thank you, everyone. That's great input. And yes, I hear that. The duplication, we can really increase our efficiencies by leveraging what has already been put out there. Okay, let's switch gears just to hair. And I'm gonna ask this to Chris, but again, anybody jump in. Really speaking about the technology and getting the general public, quote, I'll use air quotes for general public because I'm someone who believes that's not a real thing. And but anyway, how do you get landowners and the public interested in using apps like EDDMapS? What are the selling points? Are there incentives that can be provided? And how do you overcome folks that are just technologically unsavvy? And just how do you break those barriers and get the public engaged and get them using it and reporting it and feeling really good about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it all comes to comfort level. And so what we've done is really tried to not just throw them in to report all invasive species and use this all the time, but instead it's, a focused event. So it may be that we do a hike with people and we focus on 2 species. And so they get used to stuff with somebody else that already knows it, right? They can see people doing it. They try entering data the first time with somebody helping them. They have to only know 2 species or something like that. And so I think kind of building up people's confidence that they can do that is important. And then they know how to do it with somebody, so then they have more confidence to do it on their own. But then the other side of it is just really emphasizing kind of the value of this data. And so what we try to do here is highlight success stories that came out of citizen reporting. And we have one where we eradicated Brazilian alodia out of a lake because somebody found it early at a boat ramp. We reported it and we were able to get it out of that lake. or, we found chaff flower in a new spot and we're able to get rid of it. And so showing them that, this isn't just an empty exercise, but what they do is actually having an on-the-ground input to natural resource management, to improving the systems and natural resources in an area, I think just grounds their work that, yes, they are appreciated, what they're doing has an impact. And I think that is what everybody's looking for, especially if they're trying to donate their time or their efforts.
Yeah, and I'll comment on that as well. I completely agree with what Chris just said. I think one of the big points for us is to really drive home why people should use the app, why they should report invasive species. That comes back to the fundamental, education that we all are trying to do here and make people care and understand the impacts of invasive species. And also, like Chris said, make it easy for them. Show them, like we provide training opportunities, show them walk through reporting on a tablet in person. And I think once people have submitted one report and kind of gone over that initial hurdle, it's a lot easier for them to continue to submit reports in the future. So that training is really critical. And I think that we are finding a disconnect too between the people that are downloading EDDMapS and the people that are reporting them. There's a huge discrepancy there. There's a lot more people downloading than are reporting. We're really working on strategies to bridge that gap. But highlighting success stories, that was another one I was going to say as well. So that has been absolutely key, showing people how that this works, that this is actually a really effective tool. It can be implemented or utilized for early detection, rapid response efforts, and showcasing and really focusing on those case studies and those success stories is key.
Okay, I want to hang with you for just a minute, Megan. You just said something that I think is really interesting, and it might just be an app thing, right? But that there's a lot more people downloading it than are actually using it and reporting it. And I know I've been guilty of downloading apps and never opening them and using them. But how do you, because you said you're trying to bridge that gap, how are you going about trying to bridge that gap? Is there some sort of direct target marketing or retargeting that you're doing with those individuals to try to get them to really engage and use that technology?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so most of the time I've been in this role has been during COVID. So we are at a little bit of, obviously we're not doing in-person events, so that makes things a little different. We look forward to being able to do those. But the first step, I think, is looking at your data. So, understanding how many downloads you have and understanding how many people are actually reporting and really spending some time looking at those data and understanding what's happening. Then we implemented contests like the Big Ed Award, our big wrestling belt, which again has been garnered so much interest. So we saw a spike in our social media posts, our reach of anything pertaining to that award over our regular posts. So giving people that competitive incentive, providing incentive for folks to actually download it, I think has been a big award. And so we're learning from, again, looking at our social media data and seeing what is actually working and implementing more strategies like that. So we have some plans, utilizing some ideas from Washington actually to have some species blitzes this summer, offering up some really fun awards, prizes, that sort of thing. We're hoping that that'll work, Elizabeth. So we're in the early days of really understanding this, but that's our strategy. That has been our strategy to date.
From an Ontario perspective, aside from stealing Alberta's idea and maybe coming up with something similar, one of the things that I wanted to address in the question was how do we engage with people who are a little bit more technologically challenged? And in Ontario, we're really fortunate to have the invading species hotline as well. So we provide people with a phone number in addition to, the ability to report online. And, what we do in that circumstance is when we have a report come through, we have a number of different calls that come through that vary in nature, as you can all imagine. But if a report's coming through, let's say somebody calls and says, I want to report this species here. What we'll do is we'll actually just walk them through getting us a photo, like just keep it bare minimum. If it's a demographic that they just don't know how to use a computer or they don't own a computer, we'll ask them if they have a smartphone or if they have somebody who can send a photo. Because again, for it to go into our EDDMapS, we want to make sure that we're absolutely confirming the species, and we do that via photos. So if they're able to get that photo to us, then we can just ask them for sighting information, like where are you, how much did you see, et cetera, et cetera. So then we can actually input that report into EDDMapS ourselves, right? Like we have the manpower to be able to do that. Most of the time, this past summer was quite interesting because it was so exceptionally busy for us. And I think that was made worse or better, depending on how you look at it. Because of COVID, there were a lot of people really engaging with our landscapes, which was fantastic. You had a lot of people getting out doing that gardening that they might not have done otherwise, and seeing something, whether it was garlic mustard or goutweed or what have you, and then calling the invading species hotline to report it. And then obviously, alternatively, we provide people with resources like best management practices guides and things like that to help them facilitate actually getting that stuff out of there. So yeah, that's how we kind of do it on the low tech end of things. But then with EDDMapS, it's really about really pushing it through social media. It's about those in-person engagements, which again, in the last year hasn't really happened. But historically, when I go deliver a presentation to a lake association or whoever, there's always a spot within the presentation that fundamentally focuses on EDDMapS, its function, how to download it, or how to use the web page, and so on and so forth. So it really comes down to person as well as social media. So, but right now it's really social media.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a couple of questions about different types of boot brush stations and different types of tools. I'm going to direct you to NAISMA.org and PlayCleanGo.org. Look at the store, check it out. If you have questions, email Krista. She can help you choose the right thing for you. But there's a lot of different options. And so I'm just going to send everyone, in fact, I invite every single person attending to visit the websites and visit the store and check out the various tools that are available there. A lot of chatter about that belt. Folks like the belt. I kind of want to come to Alberta and compete for the belt. So the question is Alberta maybe open to some other places mimicking that effort and creating some belts in their spaces? And
Definitely.
that's a great idea. No, I don't have a competitive edge at all. Okay, I am going to direct this one over to Alexis. 2020, not only did we have the pandemic going on, but we also had murder hornets. And murder hornets became an international sensation, gave us all something else to focus on for a little while. Lots of media attention. I was told there was recently even a Jimmy Kimmel Show skit, and I got some real big attention for invasive species. So the question revolves around your takeaways. You know, what should we be learning from your experience in terms of, you know, how to utilize first detector programs, how to provide consistent messaging, and how to really go from early detection to rapid response in an international spotlight very quickly? Lots packed into that, but share a little bit with us about murder hornets and your experience as it relates to our discussion today, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to be honest, I was waiting for that one. I get that one a lot. So thank you. I think it's a really great example to use because it is so sensational and it is such a big deal. And it was such a new species that nobody had on their radar, right? So the Washington Invasive Species Council, we have a list of priority species. We developed that with our partners. So there are very clear things that we're looking for. And murder hornets was not one of them. And so I think this was it was an interesting opportunity. I don't want to say great because we're not thrilled that they're here, but it was an interesting opportunity to really test a lot of these things we had been practicing, right? Like we had been communicating with partners, we had been developing rapid response plans. The council's been around for a long time. And so we were lucky to have these really well-developed relationships already and build off of that and see this really successful program come almost instantaneously out of thin air from nothing. And the funniest part for us is that there was this delay. So we all knew about this several months before the public did. We had been working with it. We already had a plan. So we did have a little bit of a head start before the news picked it up, and it went wild. And so by that point, we were all a little confused, being like, you guys, you're like 6 months behind. This is old news. What's the big deal? But picking it up, realizing that people were really concerned with this, and then focusing in on those really clear messages. And so we were getting calls from people on the East Coast. We were getting emails from folks internationally. We were getting people from all over the world being like, I think I found a murder hornet in my backyard, and they would send us a picture of a bug. And so it was really a challenge for us to capitalize on that energy in a way that was productive, because very rarely are invasive species at the forefront of anybody's mind on a consistent and daily basis. And so to capture that energy, to like focus and channel it for good, was probably the biggest challenge of all of this. And then of course, like to some degree, controlling the narrative that was released so people weren't just freaking out, thinking they were going to be attacked anytime they went outside, because it is a human health issue. I mean, they're very dangerous to people that are allergic to them. And so that was a real concern for folks. And so I think through our partnerships and some of the biggest takeaways I came away with were consistent messaging across the board. Make sure that everybody is saying the same thing. You can be saying it in slightly different ways, but that everybody has that same messaging throughout, and then getting out that information early and often. So our partners at the Department of Agriculture did a fantastic job. They would hold almost weekly press conferences by the time that the news picked it up, talking about what they were doing, talking about their successes, talking about their failures, and then they would always close with a call to action. And at that point, we were partnering with citizen and community scientists to be like, hey, if you're interested in trapping for this and you want to do something, here's how you can help. And then they created YouTube videos for directions of how to do the trapping, really specific instructions about what the commitment was going to take, where to send those samples, what was going to come after them. We made sure that our messaging for reporting through our app was very consistent with the Department of Agriculture. So we were all telling people the same thing, like, if you think you saw one, you have to get a photo and you have to tell us where you are. And then kind of working with people on that end. They got funding for their program, so they brought on additional people. Justin and I both kind of stopped what we were doing for the better part of 2 months and focused just on Asian giant hornet. But again, it was that consistent messaging, building on these plans that we had already created over just our partnerships working together, and then getting out information as often as we could. We had a webpage dedicated to it. We had a YouTube channel dedicated to it. We did weekly press conferences. I did tons of social media outreach in every avenue that I could, all just saying the same things of like, don't panic. Here's what happens. Pollinators are generally good. So no, we don't want these things to come here, but please just don't squish anything that flies. Like, there are certain things that we're looking for, and this is the impact that if we get too excited that things can have. So yeah, it was a really interesting opportunity to practice a lot of those things in real time that we had been utilizing all along.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Really just applaud Washington and the council for their efforts and outstanding job. Anybody else have any comments they want to share with murder hornets? Or the parallel to in 2021 has been the zebra mussel infested moss balls that I know many of you have also worked on, that has just recently come up last month, and a very similar situation, and what we're really talking about here, for so long we were raising awareness, right? For so long we wanted people to be aware, but PlayCleanGo, EDDMapS, Wildspotter, Don't Move Firewood, report. This is action. We need people to move to action, and we need to empower people to feel good about taking those actions. And the action may change depending on the species and the response. But how are these tools playing in similarly this year with moss balls and the response that's been going on there?
I'll just say about the giant hornets, it was in the world here where we're trying to get everybody in my world in Illinois, we're trying to get people interested and raise awareness of invasive species. And everybody knew about murder hornets. And so it was like, oh, come on, we don't have murder hornets, but we do have bush honeysuckle or something like that. So there was a lot of jealousy going on, and how, high level of awareness you had there. But we did use it in some ways. We said, no, we don't have murder hornets, but we do have this and this and this. And so we tried to capitalize on the name recognition here just to pull people into what we actually have in the other invasive species. So it was helpful that way. It wasn't helpful that I got sent 20 pictures of random bee-looking insects every day. But other than that, it worked for us. We tried to make it work.
Yeah, from an Ontario perspective, it was interesting, because the one thing that we've always suffered from is essentially the stories that the media chooses to portray, right? Whether it's kind of like the taste of the day. So in that case, it was Asian hornets, and even though like no Asian hornet had ever been found in Ontario, I had probably well over 100 reports last year of Asian hornets in Ontario. And it was like, man, like we need to get people, like you said, Chris, to maybe divert some of that attention to some of the other species that we do have and that we are trying to control. But what I find is when you ask them, like, oh, where did you hear about this? Or like, oh, I saw it in the news. I saw it in, CBC. I saw it in this. I saw it in that. And it's just like, oh man, if only we could control the species that, the media decides to focus on, maybe we could get more reports associated with like the higher level species or higher profile species in Ontario. So that's one thing that we always try to do is we create these media packages, right, with all the details related to, Asian carps, grass carp specifically, because it has been found in Ontario's waters and we want people on the lookout for it. And then we'll send it off to all these different media outlets. And you might get one or two, but it's never to the extent of, something as in your face as a murder hornet or an Asian hornet. So, at times you almost become apathetic. You're like, oh man, there's no way I can control that. But here I am on the receiving end of all those phone calls, right? But yeah, like I said, it's something that you notice every single year is those trends in invasive species reports that are heavily influenced by media.
You do have to, just to jump off of what Brooke said, you do have to be careful as invasive species managers not to dip into alarmism as well. And so I think that's always a risk, that if you label, it murder bush honeysuckle or something like that, just to try to get more action, you become the person that cried wolf, and then if you really do have a big issue later, you've already sounded the alarm so many times that suddenly people don't care what you say. So I really try to reserve like an all-out blast and an all-out sound in the alarm for when it's really necessary. And when I'm talking about invasive species, I try not to say that every invasive species I'm talking about is going to end the world, is going to crash natural resources, because it's disingenuous, right? And so I think it for us to build a level of trust and respect in the media and the public, we have to be honest, and I think, and not drop into alarmism. I think that's very important too.
Thank you, Chris. That's such a good point. So when we were doing a lot of our outreach, we were walking this really fine line of like wanting to make sure people knew this was really important because it was new, because it could have a real impact on our honeybees in our state, and it could have a real human health issue, while also mitigating everybody going outside and squishing bugs. Because we realized very quickly through this outreach, this was sort of like a gateway insect to invasive species, that for a lot of folks, this might be the first time they're actually paying attention to the insects that come to their home or to come to their flowers or they interact with on a hike. And especially because we were in the midst of COVID, a lot more people were home. And so they had the time to observe this species. And so it was this really interesting, perfect storm of a lot of people being kind of in their home in one place on that constant news cycle, now having all the time in the world to observe the things that were going on around them. And so we're still having conversations even today where like how the murder hornet monkey ear came about was sort of a bad translation. And then we were getting away from using that term, but then people weren't realizing that Asian giant hornet and murder hornet were the same thing. And so we started to kind of merge that back into some of our social media outreach. But it was such an interesting time where finally people were coming to us asking about invasive species, which, I mean, you all know never happens. We spend all of our time trying to be like, hey, you should report this thing, it's a big deal, or maybe don't plant this in your yard, it's bad. Where for the first time in my career, I had people knocking on my door being like, what other invasive species are there? What other things should we care about? And so it was just such an interesting thing where we really tried to keep that momentum going without freaking everybody out that the world was ending. And so that we've had a lot of conversations about how to keep sort of that progress going without the alarmism that comes with it. Because as Elizabeth just said, we have moss balls, which also came to Washington and were discovered here. So now we're on to the next emergency and the next fire. And again, trying to work that balance between alarmism and just getting people to not be apathetic.
Leigh, one more final comment before we wrap it up and move on to our next panel.
Yeah, I think Alexis really hit the nail on the head with the importance of not being alarmist and keeping things sort of framed in a real and scientific way. We had a question that was kind of struggling with the technology about how we name these things. Like murder hornets is not a helpful name, and framing things as inherently foreign, like talking about Asian hornets in a climate right now where we have a lot of problems with xenophobia and othering. Sometimes it's just not really helpful. So being really careful with your wording and making sure that you're respectful to those sort of cultural trends, I think is also a really important thing for everybody who works with invasive species to consider to make sure that you're not, you know, accidentally associating things that really should not be associated in human culture with the biology of invasive species.